Welcome in, everybody, to the first ever episode of Making the Cut. That's right. We told you we'd have new shows here at Important Nonsense, and that's just one of them. So, Neil Smith, and new to the website. Well, not really new to the website, but more new to our live streaming and podcasting arm, Lance Exley. Lance, good to be working with you, buddy. I've been looking forward to this for a while. Why don't we take a second and have you introduce yourself a little bit in the background? What's your background? What can people expect from you this season on with the site?
Honestly, just trying to drive people more towards guillotine. I tried my first guillotine league last year and I loved it. Really just enjoying the struggle with everyone. Just the struggle of everyday fantasy football, the overreactions to week one, the waiver wire, all of it. All of it. I'm here for all of it. So, you know, I'm right there with you.
That's awesome. So yeah, this is the guillotine focused show. We started playing guillotine last year. We started writing guillotine content a couple years ago. Uh and then most of us got into it for the first time last year. So we've been playing for a little while now, and so this is what this show is really going to be about. It's going to be guillotine focused, and primarily we're going to be talking about ads and drops and trying to manage your cap space because guillotine's a crazy animal. So just for the if anybody who's wandered into this doesn't know what guillotine is a fantasy football format. You can play it at guillotineleagues.com. So shout out and just Google guillotine fantasy football and you'll find it. And it's a very unique way of playing the game where everybody drafts and then every week the lowest scoring team is eliminated and their players are dumped on the onto the waiver wire effectively. So you have your normal waiver wire and then on top of that, whoever was the worst team that week, all their players get dumped onto the waiver wire. So you have a very interesting situation going on with that where it changes dramatically what can happen. So it's a marathon, not a sprint, and the goal is to make sure that you're just not last any given week. And that's the way that it goes. It's very fun. It's very entertaining. You really don't want to get eliminated in week one, but somebody will be. Uh, but shout out to the folks who run the guillotine leagues and just love the format. So we're gonna chop it up here. We're gonna do probably about an hour every Tuesday, talking about different ads and drops and talking about how to manage cap space and everything that entails because it's a whole different animal uh, than just standard fantasy football. So Lance, we'll go position by position just to make it easy for everybody here, and then we'll start with what is kind of a hard one uh, this week, and that's going to be quarterback.
Oh
Uh,
God.
yeah, well, quarterback's going to be rough because it's going to be a struggle. Obviously, it's very possible that the person who had Aaron Rodgers, for example, may have started him, and then it's very possible that that person was chopped. They might have been the last, the lowest scoring team. You couldn't rule that out. But obviously, that's not helping you because Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles and he's done for the year. Uh,
Right.
I can tell you, I have two. My highest rated one would be Derek Carr. Nobody ever feels great about rostering Derek Carr. It's sort of like rostering wallpaper paste. But if you needed a quarterback, he was widely available, and he proved to me in his first start that it's going to look a lot like Raider Derek Carr. It's going to be very vanilla, but it'll be serviceable if you need a quarterback in a pinch. For example, if I'm looking to replace Aaron Rodgers, if I need a backup because my guy didn't play well, or I need a quarterback for whatever reason. Maybe I only took one in the draft, and now I'm realizing like, oh crap, I might need another one. So I have another one that's a backup plan. But I'll pause there and let you go but yeah, Derek Carr would be my number one. Who would be your number one quarterback if you had to pick somebody up?
I mean, are we talking just waiver wire or take into
Yeah, just
account
generally
these are
waiver wire.
guillotine? Okay, general waiver wire. I don't know that Brock Purdy is an interesting one for me because I don't think he got drafted in a lot of leagues I was in, and I'm in more than I care to admit, but and he's not your, chuck it deep guy, but he runs a 49er offense just the way it needs to be run. He'll, throw quick passes and let the receivers do the work. I mean, Brandon Ayuk is just putting on a masterpiece of route running right now, and that obviously is panning out pretty well for him. Another guy I would be potentially interested in is Russell Wilson. I mean, he didn't have that great of a game. He only threw for 2 touchdowns, and everyone's kind of still he still has that stink on him of last year. But if it works out, at worst you roster him as a backup quarterback, and if him and Sean Payton start to put it together, you could really have a diamond in the rough there.
Okay,
So
well, who would you caution, or who would you have our viewers look at that might have been eliminated off the way? Are you going to say Joe Burrow? Because the answer is Joe Burrow.
I mean, Joe Burrow,
Like,
Jalen Hurts, Lamar
I
Jackson.
doubt I doubt enough people got eliminated with Jalen Hurts because he was bad, but he wasn't that bad.
Yeah, no, I mean, there was just a bevy of quarterbacks who probably you had to draft high and reach for that didn't pan out to what you would have expected in the first. Why am I glowing right now?
Are the
Jeez.
aliens coming
That
to take you out of
yeah.
the yeah. Uh no, it would be for me the number one. What most likely happened is Joe Burrow might have cratered you,
Yeah, I mean
and
Joe Burrow getting 3 points for,
I would
most
immediately be
leagues.
running and putting a significant bid on Joe Burrow if I needed a quarterback. That would be my
Yeah.
number one option. If I was
That's
looking
one
to
of
go,
those just
yeah,
throw all your fab at it
I wouldn't throw all
because
my fab at it. I don't play
well,
that
not
way.
all your fab,
Yeah,
but I
my
mean
general
most
philosophy,
of your fab, if you need a quarterback, he's
I
your
wouldn't put
guy.
most of my fab because it's too early in the year.
Yeah.
Like the only reason I would be doing that is if I was really, really screwed. So I wouldn't do that. But I have a general philosophy with Guillotine, which is I never want to spend more than like X amount. So let's say you have $1,000, right?
Hmm.
You get handed $1,000. So in this, I probably would never spend more than about 10 to 12% of that any given week until about week 12. And then we're going to start blowing it up because then people's teams are going to get chopped. And I want to have the most money when the good teams start getting chopped so that I can just retool my roster in about week 13, possibly week 14, right at the deadline, because that is the last waiver run for this format. Waivers don't run weeks 15, 16, 17. So the way that I like to work is I will sit on my money until we get until like weeks 10, 11, 12. That's when I really want to start making major cash expenditures. So it's like if I could get Joe Burrow for my 10 to 12% for the week, because it's probably the only bet I'll make, great. Awesome. Uh, that's why I started bringing up ideas of like, there are other guys. Like Brock Purdy's not a bad example, but I was thinking more along the lines of Derek Carr was hardly rostered. Jordan
Hmm.
Love, widely available. Sam Howell, widely available. I
Yeah.
can get one of those three guys for well within my 10% ish uh number. So I'm talking about if I had $1,000 and you're gonna chunk that out over 14 weeks, you could effectively spend $71.5 per week. That's what you get. And so, however you want to spread that around is kind of the way I go about it. So, it depends on what position you need, it depends who's available. So, that's why I'm saying maybe I can't afford to go after Joe Burrow. You know what I mean? But my argument is what's the statistical advantage of spending all my fab to get Joe Burrow in week 2 is not worth blowing up all my fab. Like, it would depend how bad my team actually is. But for the most part, it would need to be real, 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 real bad. So by the percentages, what I would more caution you is, you know, you get 71 and a half dollars. Call it 72, right? So you get 72 bucks. So for me, I would spread that around probably a little bit because we have a lot of guys to go through still. So it's like a Jalen Hurts, a Lamar, a Jalen, if they're available, great, but somebody's going to go plunk down $300, $400. But then they're going to be out of money. They keep doing that. This is what I see every year. people get crazy. They get all saucer-eyed and they just start spending money early in the season, splashing cash. Then somebody gets hurt and they have no way to fix it. Then they get chopped. That's the way it goes.
Yeah, no,
You
that's
can't
kind of what happened to
overreact.
me
You can't overreact.
last
You
year.
got to be steady Eddie. That's why I have a
Yeah.
budget. It's how I run my life too. You have a budget. This is how much money you can spend. You don't spend more than that. And what if you do? You have to have a good reason why. Because then the next week the next couple weeks maybe you have to start like ratcheting your spending down. So that's why I'm saying like don't freak out and see like oh shit, Joe Burrow's available $500. Like no, not worth it. Not in a world where I could probably have spent $5 and gotten one of the other quarterbacks I need, use that as a band-aid, wait until week 9 or 10, somebody's going to get chopped, and then I'll just go pick up whoever off their team. You know what I mean? Quarterback is one of those positions where I only play one quarterback a week in Guillotine. You know what I mean? It's not super flex. Don't really need, and again, don't need to come in first every week. Need to not come in last.
Yeah, I mean, for me though, I have a little bit of a different philosophy with guillotine, and honestly, it's what got me in trouble last year. But I stand by it. It's like,
There's a reason I
you know,
won.
yeah, there is. I'm not gonna argue that, but it's like you got to realize, okay, so it starts out as a bigger league. You got a lot of different names in the pot. By week 6, week 7, you're cut down to a 12-team league. You have your star players by that point, you're good. So I mean, it's like, yeah, you can continually have that, fun for the rainy day. But if you're able to get Joe Burrow, who's a top 3 player at the position,
I don't believe Joe Burrow's a top 3 player at the position. That might be part of the disconnect here
well, see, that's probably it. Because I mean,
because
you
he's not a
got
running quarterback, so his ceiling is capped. I'd be
that's
much
true.
more willing to throw the money at Lamar and get the rushing floor if you were so inclined to do so. But it's a philosophy thing. I won't spend money on quarterbacks like that. I don't
Hmm.
believe in spending money on high-priced quarterback. It's not a proven thing unless you're Peyton Manning and it's 2017, and then it was worth it. But in every other instance, and that's why this year has been so annoying because this year everybody is saying, "Oh, you got to get one of the big quarterbacks and you got to pay top 3 or 4 pick to do it." No, you don't. No, you don't. You can easily wait and go way later and just make hay at wide receiver and running back and deal with quarterback later on. Quarterback is replaceable in my analytical model. So that's where I'm at with the whole thing. So that's why it's like I wouldn't spend a lot of money on if somebody got chopped because they had Joe Burrow and somebody wants to go plunk down $400 out of their budget to go let them. That's my advice. Because by the time it comes back around to me, I'll have Joe Burrow on my roster in week 12 when they're eliminated because they don't have any money to rebuild their team after buys or people get hurt or both. And that's just the way that it goes. Because there's the one constant in the NFL, Lance, which is that people are going to get hurt.
That is true. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, you said it earlier, and that probably was a team that waited on their quarterback and built up a lot of different players from their rosters. So you probably have a
They're probably
lot of
fine
value elsewhere.
unless they got eliminated because they took a zero at quarterback. They're probably going to be fine. They'll they'll find a different quarterback and then band-aid it up and roll along. But they might have very well been eliminated uh because of that. So what was your full list of names there? You had a handful. You had
I threw in Russell Wilson. Another name that really just kind of jumps off the paper, and I think there was a lot of question marks about him coming into the season, was Tua,
oh
just with
yeah,
his health
sure.
and everything. And see, I don't know how many people actually started Tua this past week, but I
Started was
mean,
not as much, but rostered was a lot.
I think there was a lot of people rostered, so you easily could have someone out there who had him as a backup, didn't start him, started Rodgers, and then boom, now Tua's on the wire. I'd rather go get,
If by some miracle Tua was on the wire, I mean, yeah, he would be a
yeah.
top pick. Uh, but I think that's the kind of the advice is if one of the big names is available, you know how I'm going to tell you. If you have $72, if you can figure out how to get one of those big names for $72, go nuts. If not, I'm going to ferret around in the dumpster in the bargain bin, and I'm going to get a Derek Carr or a Sam Howell or a Brock Purdy if he's available, or a Jordan Love, and just kind of roll it forward from there if I was looking for some sort of quarterback replacement. Because where I would rather spend my money is the position I want to talk about next, which is running back. Because running back is always an area where you want to spend money. You're always going to need running backs. It's just the way it's going to be. Especially because this year already, running back it's week one. So that's the other thing we should point out here. You never want to overreact to week one. Week one is a mess. There was that was some real slop football we watched. Like it was bad football across the board. Uh, but there's always going to be running backs that are available, and there's some that you'd want to really look at. And before we get into like big names that might have been chopped, just generally, you should be looking at Kenny Gainwell. He played like 60% of the running back snaps. DeAndre Swift is droppable. Hooray for that! In a week that
Yeah.
Rashad Penny was a healthy scratch.
Yeah.
You
So
can
I
go. You
mean,
can go ahead and just drop DeAndre Swift. He's done. Again, you don't really want to like overreact too much to week one. So if you don't want to drop him and you want to give him another couple weeks to see where it goes, go ahead. But at this point, I'm of the mind that he could likely just be dropped.
he's in the
Uh,
Eagles offense. There's too many mouths to feed. Jalen Hurts
that's
is
the
going to
problem.
run it. I mean, he's injury prone. There's so many reasons
There's
to
no such thing
drop
as
him.
injury prone, Lance. You and I are going to have a lot of conversations this year. Injury prone's not a real thing. That's not an actual thing.
Eh,
I'll get Dr. Edwin Porras on here to explain it to you if you want.
okay. Okay.
I'll be more than happy to. You notice how we have on our Discord, and sign up for our Discord at importantnonsense.com. You notice how on our Discord we have a thing that says injury news? You ever notice that? The little channel that says injury news, and it's one guy, and his name is Dr. Edwin Porras. So Dr. Edwin Porras is a friend of the site. And not affiliated with us, just somebody we think is cool, and we've worked with him in the past. That guy's an actual doctor, and his whole thing is about how injury prone's not a real thing. And he's proven it to me over the years that injury prone is a myth. It doesn't actually exist in real life. You just have some guys who have better luck than other guys, and some guys who recover from injuries better than other guys. And the actual people that are injury prone, that list might as well be two people. It's Mike Williams
Yeah.
and it's Mike Williams again. Actually, it's pretty much Mike Williams. Like, there's very few people that are actually like really qualify as injury prone. DeAndre Swift doesn't really qualify as injury prone. More like unlucky and doesn't really heal in a resilient manner. But
No.
I do agree with you on the too many mouths to feed, and that's actually my main issue. But
Hmm.
so there's guys like that where it's like, boy, we had some real. If you wanted to hold on to Cam Akers or DeAndre Swift, I wouldn't necessarily blame you. But Swift in particular is like, if you wanted to drop him, I wouldn't even bat an eye at you. Uh, so I'd let people make that call individually. But you're going to have to be replacing J.K. Dobbins anyway. There's going to be people that are looking for J.K. Dobbins replacements. By the way, you want to talk about injury prone? We're getting there. We're working on it. But I would say, like, for me, the certain people that I'd really want to look at before we get into like the chopped people, take a look at like Kenny Gainwell, take a look at Jalen Warren. And if I'm rostering Najee Harris, we tried to warn you all off season, actually. But if you're here, you're here. Yeah, take a look at Jalen Warren, who's going to be a thorn in that all. Hey, what's up, Polo? Polo, welcome to Guillotine. I have no idea if you play Guillotine or have any idea what we're talking about, but this is a Guillotine formatted show, so buckle up. But yeah, Jalen Warren, it would be the next name that I'd be looking at. And then it would be very close between Kyron Williams and Josh Kelly.
See, for me, that's not even close. I'm going Josh Kelly all the time, all day, all
I
day.
just don't know enough about what that translates to in terms of where Eckler is, in terms of how injured he is. Is he actually going to miss time? I don't know. Whereas, it's a temporary type of deal. Whereas Kyron Williams is slightly ahead for me because Akers was healthy. He did not get hurt, and he still lost half his job to Kyron Williams, who's a guy. I fully admit he's a guy. He's not, and I don't mean that in like he's a dog kind of way. I mean like he's just a dude. He's a body with a football helmet. He's not great, but I would very much be looking to splash some cash out on some of that stuff because those are things that should be rostered in your league, even though it's guillotine. So that handful of names is something that I would keep an eye on. Kenny Gainwell 1, Jalen Warren, Kyron Williams, Josh Kelly. Do you want to add anybody to that list? Those are just the generic kind of waiver wire guys that I would start with before we get into like players that might have been chopped off a team that you might want to be looking for.
A couple names that I would throw in there. Obviously, Aaron Jones had a huge game. AJ Dillon played 48% of the snaps.
Only
I
because
think, which,
Aaron Jones tweaked his hamstring.
yeah,
What did
I,
AJ
I
Dillon do with 48% of the snaps too, Lance? What did he do with it?
not
Looked
much,
like
but
looked like garbage. Looked
it
like hot garbage.
at the same time, this Packers offense is not going to be throwing 3 touchdowns every single week. I think they're going to lean on the running game a lot, and I think AJ Dillon's going to get back to the quadzilla we're used to seeing this year.
I
I
think AJ
just
Dillon is bad at football and historically has been hideously inefficient. And you can have all the quads you want, but if you can't hit the hole and actually turn it into positive yardage, I don't care. And I got a lot of people and Mike Manning agrees with me on that. PFF's own Mike Manning and I had this conversation. He's just not, I just don't think he's good. That's the problem. But it is worth noting that Aaron Jones did tweak his hamstring, so that's going to be another fun issue all year to deal with. I
Mhm.
roster a lot of Aaron Jones. As you can tell, as you can probably guess, I roster a lot of Aaron Jones.
He was
Um,
such a discount he never goes in the first round, and I don't know why. Like, he is one of the premier backs in this league,
Yeah, that's why I
and
get a lot of Aaron Jones because you can get him in like the third, fourth round. And it's like,
it's
yeah, I'll take
yeah.
Aaron Jones in the third, fourth round. People get all they twist this around. They're like, well, Aaron Jones never got the full job, blah. And I'm like, I don't care. If they tried to give him the full job, he'd die. He'd be hurt by week 7, so he'd be on IR. So I really don't want you to do that. I need AJ Dillon to be there to be that battering ram. I just think AJ Dillon's bad. Like and historically that's bared itself out. So, but yeah, of the cheap names, the Neil's bargain bin, as we're
I
gonna
think
start calling it, I think.
I think
Um,
Justice Hill is another name I'd throw in
that's
there
another one I was just gonna
over.
say. Justice Hill is
Oh,
also in the Neil's
yeah,
bargain bin area of don't blow a lot of money on this. You get $72. You could very easily spend $10 on Sam Howell and another $10 on two of these guys that we just mentioned. And yeah, Justice Hill is in there. Gus Edwards is in there. Devin A. Chain is in there. He was probably drafted, but he might have been cut, or he might actually get cut because he didn't do enough in week 1. But yeah, Justice Hill, Gus Edwards, all that stuff should be looked at. So yeah, in order, it'd be Gainwell, Warren, Kyron Williams, Josh Kelly, uh, Tank Bigsby, Devin A. Chain, Roshan Johnson, Gus Edwards,
Justice
and
Hill.
Justice Hill. And he'd be the last
Yep.
one. And then after that, I probably would just pass because I don't want Zach Moss, who was the last name on my list, and I can't even bring myself to say it because I've been burned by Zach Moss too many times over the years. So that would be kind of my list of the bargain bins, and then at the top end, there's definitely some players that somebody got chopped. You know what I mean? So there's going to be some obvious names at running back. The hard part is we don't know why you got chopped, and it's only week 1, so it's kind of hard for me to go after. There's certain names that would be obvious. You know what I mean? If the guy who had Bijan Robinson or Derrick Henry or CMC or Saquon or Tony Pollard or Travis Etienne, Josh, any of that, now I'm warming up to where you're at, Lance, where it's like I'll give you $200 for that. Like, because if my running back, that's where I might make an exception, and then play catch up on my little budget for the next couple of weeks to accommodate it. Because if any of those top 10 running back type of deals manage to hit the wire, yeah, I'd go for that because it's really hard to replace that level of participation. But it's hard to know exactly who I would recommend at this point because I can't point to one name and be like, "Oh, that probably cratered your entire team." at the running back position. There were definitely some wide receivers and quarterbacks and tight ends that could have cratered your entire team and probably did. But at running back, it's a little more challenging.
Right.
Was there any running back that you thought that like super underperformed that might be on their way to a backup or a bounce back?
I mean, significant, like you said, I don't think anyone really cratered, but a couple of 5-point performances where you really needed something. Damian Pierce,
Yeah,
he's a guy who, I mean, unquestioned workload. Maybe Devin Singletary will get some passing down snaps, but he's really got a decent role there. Roshan Johnson came in when the game was kind of getting out of hand. I think Roshan Johnson might be the lead back by the end of the year, but until then, they're going to lean heavy on Khalil Herbert. Um, he's someone
I don't know. Are
that,
they going to show up and embarrass themselves every week?
uh,
Because that's going to become the problem. From what I saw, everyone should be hugely embarrassed by what
yeah,
happened.
that was god awful. I don't even have any words for how bad that was. I mean, they played like a team who definitely deserved the number one pick because that was the whole thing is, oh, they're in the number one pick, but only because Houston lost. They played like a team that definitely deserved to have that number one pick this past year, and they're on their way to getting it this year too. Um, like you said, Cam Akers is another one in there, but if it's me, I just don't want anything to do with that LA
I
backfield.
don't roster Cam Akers historically ever. I would be willing to roster Kyron Williams because it would be very, very cheap to do so.
For a guy who's playing 65% of the
That's what
snaps,
I
I would
mean.
agree.
Like,
I
I'm
would
willing to do that
agree.
because it's very cheap for what I think I might be getting. And if it's not what I wanted, then I'll just cut him again and don't care. What about like
Absolutely.
Jameer Gibbs? Is there any optimism for that if the person who had Jameer Gibbs was cut? Because he didn't, he had very limited work in week one.
So David Montgomery played a significant amount of the snaps. Every single time Gibbs touched the ball, and I knew he was a good back coming out. Every single time he touched the ball, I had to sit up in my chair and lean forward. Just that every single run he had was electric. So they're gonna they're gonna get him more involved. There's no way they're gonna go through. David Montgomery, like you said, is probably like with Jalen Warren and Najee Harris, he's gonna be a thorn in his side, but Jameer Gibbs, I think his workload is gonna increase over the next coming weeks.
Yeah, if he was chopped and he was on there, I wouldn't blow my whole fab budget to get him, but I would take a punt at it if I could get him.
Yeah, you're not getting a
Uh,
bad now, but you're getting a solid player for sure.
you're gonna get something, and it could be pretty special. Maybe we'll see how it pans out. But yeah, we have plenty of recommendations for running back. It's just hard to know which of the running backs like you might have had that might have flamed out. But like, for example, if the person had James Cook, I would pay a significant amount for James Cook, who
You
played
would?
70% of the snaps and only had 10 fantasy points, but that usage rate would be equivalent to a usage rate of guys that are a top 12 running back.
That's true.
So
I'm with Josh Allen and how often he runs, that makes me nervous where I would probably be more towards the shallow end of the fab on that.
yeah, but I mean, it doesn't really matter. It didn't matter in that first game. If he's gonna get the level of work he got with a chance of it increasing, he's already in the conversation to be in the RB1 area. It's just how it works. It's just math. Like mathematically, he would be in that conversation, especially because it's almost inevitable that one of these people will get hurt. So, all right, we're kind of at the halfway point. So we had some good running back recommendations, but it's hard to know about the top end. I guess the general advice would be if one of the top end running backs got cut, you should probably consider. That'd be the one exception to my budget rule where I might be willing to throw some money at it, depending on who it was specifically. Uh, and then we'll look at wide receiver. Wide receiver is interesting because this is probably how you died. For example, I know we've been doing the cheap players first, but I'm just going to start with one of the ones that T. Higgins took a zero.
Higgins, yeah.
There's every chance T. Higgins took a zero. The T. Higgins killed you. If I wasn't, if I was, they're not going to play in a hurricane every week. and he had 8 targets. So I would give a significant amount of money to get T. Higgins on my team. That would be one of the ones where I would make an exception, because that would be worth doing. So there's certain players that might have killed you. T. Higgins was definitely one of them. And then one of the other ones that might have killed you was Devonta Smith might have killed you. That's another one where I think better days are ahead. I wouldn't blow my fab budget and spend $200, but I'd give you $50 of my $72. I'd put even as much as 60 on it, depending on what else I needed, possibly all of it. Like I'd put up $75 if I had to, and just that'd be fine. Same thing with T. Higgins. I would easily give you $75 for that. Might even be willing to go to 100 and then readjust in future weeks. If somebody wants to blow their entire fab budget, usually my advice is to let them, because it's historically it's not a great idea in guillotine or in regular fantasy. But there's definitely certain guys that might have killed you. And yeah, T. Higgins is one. Devonta Smith is another. And that's probably it at the true top end. Everybody else was more or less salvageable. Better days, I think, are ahead for Chris Godwin. Better days are, I doubt you got cut because of that. Better days are ahead for
Smith.
Yeah, Gary, but that might have killed you. That's what I was
Mm-hmm.
saying. For Higgins and Smith, I might have be willing to. You might be looking at that on the wire. The players I'm
Yeah.
concerned about, Garrett Wilson. There's nothing you can do about it, but you got to temper your expectations now because you're back to where you were last year with Garrett Wilson, supremely talented player on a team with a crappy quarterback, and he scored that touchdown last night and bailed you out. And but is he going to score every week? I don't know. So but you're just going to have to deal with your new life. That's the new normal. Welcome to football, unfortunately. So that sucks. And then the other one that I'm looking at that I've got an eyebrow raised, anything on the Bears. DJ Moore, everybody. All the Bears. All the Bears not named Roshan. Uh,
I gotta think that DJ Moore is gonna bounce back. I mean, I
Heard it
know
before.
he
Doesn't always happen.
started off rough last year in Carolina too, but
Last couple years. Last year was the worst of them.
he bounced back though. I mean, he wasn't
Yeah, but you were already
top
eliminated
15.
from the playoff. You were already eliminated from the playoffs by the time that happened. Oh, hold on. Brian Cook wants to know what we thought of the Eagles game. I thought it was classic week 1 football where everybody was super rusty and the Patriots defense played pretty well overall, and they lost J.C. Horn. Not really concerned about the Eagles only scoring 25 points. I think DeAndre Swift is droppable. If
Mhm.
you're rostering him and you want to hold on to it, go ahead. And then the Patriots looked exactly like what I thought the Patriots would look like, which is a crappy offense with a good defense. Ramondre
Yeah,
Stevenson did Ramondre Stevenson things. He's going to have a huge workload all year long. Kind
that's
of instant
really
analysis.
yeah, no, that's really about it. I mean, bigger takeaway was from the Eagles defense. I mean, if you have them as a like you're solid. You don't have to think about it for the rest of the year aside from your bye week. Jalen Carter made every single person regret not drafting him. So if you have a running back that's playing the Eagles, unless they're top of the league, just temper your expectations. I wouldn't say bench anyone, but I would just say temper your expectations because
They were
Jalen
really
Carter
good last year
is going
too,
to
and then they
be,
got half of the championship Georgia Bulldogs defense on their team because people don't
yeah,
understand how to draft a
how
football
to
team.
draft. Yeah, it's hard.
Um, Back to this. The other one that I'm really concerned about besides DJ Moore is Christian Kirk. We were talking about that in the
Mm,
preseason, that suddenly there's a lot more mouths to feed hanging out around there, and he's pretty much just playing the slot. So if you were drafting Christian Kirk at ADP, you were probably going to be sad. And that's already bearing itself out in week 1. And then my final one to be concerned about, where it's like, don't overreact to week 1, but that's one of the ones I'm genuinely concerned about. And then the other one is Drake London.
mm.
Tried to warn everybody about this in 32 teams in 32 days. That's a run-first football team. Arthur Smith is not that smart. Desmond Ritter is not that good. They won that game. Congratulations to them. But that team is not going to win a lot of games, like
No.
as constructed. So, and I'm really concerned about Drake London just because of the lack of opportunities and the inaccuracy of the quarterback in general. So that's kind of the ones that I'm really concerned about. But it's hard to say any of the ones that got chopped. Is there anybody that you're really looking to target over there, Lance? Like who are you recommending that folks should be trying to target for week 2 waivers?
A name that's trendy. He played 91% of the snaps. Kendrick Bourne. I
Okay, sure.
would definitely. I wouldn't avoid him, but I definitely would not target him as anxiously as it seems like people have been going after him. I just don't. You saw it with the Patriots for probably the past 2 years now. Their wide receiver one changes week to week. They,
Mhm.
focus on Hunter Henry. The next week it'll be Mike Gesicki. Juju will come back
It'll
in
never be
there.
Mike Gesicki because Mike Gesicki's bad.
Mike Gesicki's bad, but they love tight ends, so they'll fight. But then again, everyone said the same thing about Jonnu Smith, and we saw
I
how
know,
that
and then they
worked
just threw it
out.
to Hunter Henry anyway, and I'm like, Hunter Henry is the right answer. It's who's the real wide receiver one on there? It's Hunter Henry. That's really what it is. Like, I hate to be so flippant about it. That's kind of where we've landed.
Someone who might find himself in a Debo role, especially with the injury to J.K. Dobbins, is Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers
Okay,
came out and had a great game, and I realize he might be rostered by a lot of people
that's the only
currently,
problem with that is that he's
but
probably overly rostered.
if you're able to find him, you know, definitely jump on it right away because
Yeah,
he
get
is
it
gonna
now,
get,
because
yeah.
it ain't gonna be a thing for very long. He's gonna be gone. Uh,
Um, Puka Nakawa
okay,
was
let's
another
pause
one.
there. So if we get as we get into now, we're starting to talk about guys that might just be widely available in guillotine and in waivers in general.
Mhm.
So my number one name is actually Puka. And it's weird that we've had two Rams, and I know we don't want to overreact to week one, so I'm not going to blow
Yeah.
all my fab budget. But Puka is only rostered in 5% of leagues.
Yeah, that's way too low.
So he's completely available. And I believe, is not only the number one wide receiver, he's the number one waiver claim.
Mhm.
Number one overall is Puka. Everything was on display. He played 75% of the snaps. It was actually closer to like 81. He played, his route participation rate was insane for a guy that no one's ever heard of. And then he had a really nice statistical day on top of it. So he got the usage, he got the opportunities, and he actually converted it, which is not something I was expecting from A, the Rams, or B, a guy that frankly, like a rookie that very few people were even like aware of. Like, you got to dig pretty deep into the NFL before you start getting to Puka Nakawa.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
that's like you got to know a lot of names to get to there. But just to put a fine point on it, Cooper Cup will be back at some point, but you can't pass on the guy who just got 15 targets.
When is Cooper Cup gonna be back? Because
Well, he's on the
IR
IR, so he's going to miss at least 4 weeks. So that's he's
and
got three more to go. Earliest is week
well,
5.
that's best case scenario. You don't know that he's
Right.
coming back. So, and especially with how it seems worse than it is. It seems like he's going to be out for longer than just the 4 weeks. So, I wouldn't hesitate on getting Puka at all, thinking that Cooper Cup's going to come back and it's just a rental. Get the hot hand now because, if he slides into that second role, you've seen what, the second wide receiver can do in that offense between Brandon Cooks, Robert Woods.
It's been a couple of years, but I know what you're talking. You're talking about Robert
It's been a
Woods
couple
from
of
days
years,
gone
but
by.
I mean,
Yeah.
Puka Nakawa is a young receiver, did great things in college. I mean, the only receiver to get, 15 targets aside from him this week was Tyreek Hill. And you saw what
That's
Tyreek
right.
Hill
And
did
you
with
saw
it.
what
So
Tyreek Hill did with it. So
volume is king, and
yeah,
Puka's getting it right now. So I would not be shy at all
15
in
targets, you can't
going
pass
after
on it.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He'd be the one where if I was going to plunk down, I mean, if there was no like top end wide receiver that got clipped, I'd put $75 down on Puka immediately and just walk away from it. Just be like, that's all I want. I'm just going to try to
Hmm.
get that. I wouldn't blow my whole fab budget or anything like that, but I'd easily plunk down. I'd even maybe be willing to go to 100, where it's
Right.
like, get that on your team. Because the only other one, like, and then because it goes off a cliff at wide receiver, because the next name I have is Jacoby Myers,
Yep.
and it's he had a good game. The problem is Jacoby Myers is rostered in 65% of leagues, so 60% more leagues than Puka Nacua, and it's like it's a good game. I don't want to overreact to one good game, especially on a team that has Devontae Adams.
Hmm.
So it's like, are they going to throw enough to justify that every week? Has been my thing, but through 1 week, Jacoby Myers proved enough that it's like, no, he deserves to be rostered. There's a reason he needs to be not at 65. He needs to be, bump that up, and I'd be willing to put him on my team. And then my third wide receiver would be, who did I have at third? Can't read my own notes. It'd be Zay Jones, who I mentioned I was concerned about Christian Kirk. Zay Jones is the big beneficiary of that. If Christian Kirk is just going to play in the slot and Zay Jones is going to be the true X for that team on a team that's going to throw a lot with Trevor Lawrence, he's my next name. And then because he played well, and he played well last year with them too. Lawrence clearly likes him, and they seem comfortable with it. So if they're happy, I'm happy. And then finally, the next, or I shouldn't say finally, I have two. I have two more, but they're kind of connected. It'd be Jaden Reed and Romeo Dobbs. I
Hmm.
know that that's inflated because Watson didn't play, but I was saying this in the preseason. Both of those guys should be rostered, just to
No, absolutely.
see what it's going to look like when all three of them are healthy and on the field. And the one I would want of that more, I'm a Reed man. I don't know where you land on this, Lance, but I'm a Reed man more
I'm
so than a
Dobbs.
Dobbs man. Yeah, I'm not much of a Dobbs
Yeah.
man.
I mean, Dobbs has been the consistent one. Watson was the exciting splash player last year, but I mean, you saw the same thing from Chase Claypool a couple of years ago, and then he just fizzled out. Touchdowns are not something
I
that's
saw
going to
it
be.
from LeGarrette Blunt a really long time ago, a player that I know isn't good.
Hmm.
And then people way
Exactly. So, I
overreacted and
mean,
overdrafted him, and you get LeGarrette Blunted.
well, I mean, Gabe Davis from the Bills playoff game where he scored 4 touchdowns. People
Yeah.
overreact to touchdowns all the time.
Hmm.
So,
It's the
for
most common
me,
reason people get themselves in trouble, actually.
exactly. So for me, it was just like, Dobbs always was consistent. He was the one who was starting to get on the same page with Aaron Rodgers before his thumb got hurt in the Giants game last year. And then, through that, he kind of, went off and on, but he's shown me the most. Jalen Reed has done some good stuff in the preseason, but I'd like to see a little bit more with him and Jordan Love before
I
I kind
liked
of
his
buy into
game
it.
coming out of Michigan State. That was part
Hmm.
of it. He fits really well with what they
He's a
want.
good talent. Yeah. No, he's a
He's
great
he's a
talent.
true X. He's a true
Hmm.
X. They need an X, and he's like, by X I mean flanker. For anyone watching this who doesn't know what I'm talking about, I have a tendency to speak in those terms. He's number 2 wide receiver for the team, to put it in the most generic layman's term possible. He profiles exactly to be that, and that's what the job they gave him right out of the gate. And I was not surprised that he beat everybody to get that job. So I'm like, no, that's what he did at Michigan State. It was the exact job he had. And I don't even like Michigan State at all. I don't even think they're a good team. But every time you watched him play, he jumped off the page where it's like, look at that. Like, he's just a very natural route runner for somebody who's only 22. He's
No,
got a lot of
absolutely.
polish on his game for a guy who's 22 years old. I'll give you one more on the way out the door. Um, and it's one of my favorite little boy toys that I always seem to roster at the end. It's Rashid Shaheed, because I can't teach anyone to be that fast. No one's that fast. That's just cartoon shit. And he caught that touchdown that Derek Carr closed his eyes and just threw it down the field, and he caught it
Yeah.
anyway. And it's what he was doing last year before he got hurt. I have Rashid Shaheed in a number of leagues because you can just get him for nothing. Put $1. It's $1 for Rashid Shaheed. $2, $3 wins you Rashid Shaheed. And it could be anything. It could even be a boat. You know how much we've been wanting one of those. Take the mystery box. It's Rashid Shaheed. You don't know. It's like young Tyler Lockett is what I'm watching, where it's like he just runs down the field with his arm up, but he's so fast that they're looking to get him the ball. And he's an incredible compliment to a Chris Olave who's like a polished NFL receiver, route runner, who's fast in his own right. And then there's Michael Thomas, who's like, again, really good at working the middle of the field, creating separation, getting open, and just being a big body. And then there's Rashid Shaheed, who's just can fly at 100 mile, and it's like cartoon level speed. So he's my guy at the very end, where it's like, I just want Rashid Shaheed on the end of my roster, because there's going to be weeks, especially in like bye weeks, where I might think I'm going to lose, and I'm just going to stick Rashid Shaheed in there as like my second flex and be like, maybe he catches an 80-yard bomb and I win. Because he did it in week 1. He had 20 points. It's all largely on one play, and I don't normally recommend this, but I can't teach you to be sub 4.3. You can't. You can either do that or you can't. There's no teaching that. It's crazy to me. So he's kind of my like my little, like the little thing at the end of the roster where I'm like, nah, it's worth taking a look at, because it's really, really cheap and it might be worth something. But yeah, there's certain players too that I saw that are like droppable. Pour one out, Donovan Peoples-Jones. Pour one out. I'd consider dropping Sky Moore. I'd consider dropping a lot of Chiefs.
Not Kadarius Toney.
Oh, I would never roster Toney. See, I don't have that problem because I roster 0 shares of Kadarius Toney and actively mock people that do. So, like, this is our first show together, so you'll learn some of my little idiosyncrasies, which is I don't like the Chiefs, not just because of they're the Chiefs, but because they deal with projection inflation every year, and this is how people talk themselves into making bad choices, like drafting Kadarius Toney way too early, drafting Sky Moore way too early, because we don't even know. The only thing on that team that I feel any kind of confident about is Travis Kelce. And that was what was so messed up about that game, was they played like garbage. And Kadarius Toney won't play that bad every single week. So let's not live in that land of hyperbole. You know what I mean? He'll be cut. Yeah. He'll be out of the league. He'll be out of the league if he does. So that problem will take care of itself. We won't have to have the conversation anymore. But what's messed up is I still firmly believe that even if they had Kelce in that game, they would have won easily.
Oh, yeah. No, if
the only reason the Lions won that game was because they didn't have Kelce out there. And people were like, oh, the Lions played so well. I'm like, no, they didn't.
No, their defense looked just as bad as it did the year
defense
prior.
Played poorly.
Yeah.
And the only people that played well in that game, there were 2 people that played well in that game. And they were trying to say Jared Goff was one of them. It was not Jared Goff. Jared Goff threw for 235 yards and a touchdown. He just didn't turn the ball over. That's just game manager. That's old school Jared Goff from back with the Rams when he was plugging along. It's like, oh, he's good enough to not crash the car. That's not playing well. The people that played well were Amon-Ra St. Brown and David Montgomery.
I would maybe add Sam Laporta in there too, but maybe that's me
played well
ahead of the horse.
He played well. I mean, from a fantasy perspective.
Yeah.
He played well. I guess I mean kind of both. He played well more from a real football. He played well. Here's how I'd phrase that. He played really well for a rookie tight end, which is the hardest position in football to learn for a rookie.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give him that much. Like, he looked good for a rookie tight end, which is really hard to do. Because most rookie tight ends look like crap and don't do anything, because you got to learn. You're coming out of college, and then you got to learn how to block in the NFL and how to run routes in the NFL, and it's usually too much for anybody to learn.
Right.
You can't. It's too hard to learn both. Whereas, like, rookie running back is like, I take ball, I run there. Like, I stand next to quarterback, I throw myself into whoever the edge rusher is that's coming to hit my guy. That's really it. Like,
hope I don't get forklifted like David Montgomery did by Nick Bolton.
Yeah, and then get a penalty, and then get blown up so hard that they call a penalty on me. that was disrespectful. That was disrespectful that he got trucked and then got a penalty called on him for getting effectively forgetting truck so bad. Uh,
Yeah.
but wide receiver is always super deep. We had a lot of names there. But yeah, if there's not, if somehow like the big names didn't get chopped, you've got plenty of options on
Hmm.
waiver wire for that. We've got one last position group to go through, and it's my least favorite position group, and it's tight end. And this could be the other reason why you got chopped. I'm not gonna lie to you, Lance. You know where I'm going. You spent a lot on Travis Kelce and he didn't play. You spent a lot on Mark Andrews and he didn't play. You spent a decent amount on Pat Fryermuth. He only played half the game and then got hit in the chest and then went and sat down. And then you
Dallas
had
Goddard.
what's that?
Dallas Goddard.
Dallas Goddard,
Yeah.
catchless.
Yeah. 92% of the snaps and didn't have a
Didn't catch
catch.
it. It's the T. Higgins syndrome.
Yeah.
That team, like I was telling our our audience member Brian, I'm not really overly worried about that. You know what I mean? Like that's going to correct itself. It's week 1. Everybody looked really rusty,
Hmm.
except for the Rams, which was really weird. But
No,
just about
yeah.
everybody looked really rusty. They look like they're knocking the rust off still and trying to get into fighting shape. Just about every team looked like that. The Chiefs look bad. The Lions look bad. The Vikings look like a disaster. The Giants look like they should be relegated to go play Pee Wee football. Everybody looked bad. The Bucks look bad. Everybody, like I'm trying to think of like who looked good. That's not the Dolphins and the Rams.
Cowboys look good, but
Sure.
at the same time,
At the
Giants
same
just
time,
looked that bad.
how hard was that?
So that's kind of the thing is like the teams that look good. Green Bay is another one, but was it Green Bay
The
looking
Bears
good
should
or
be
was it just Chicago looking that bad? So I mean,
looked
it's
like looking like
yeah,
they've never even seen a football before.
right.
So
So
it's one of
it's
those.
yeah, no, it's definitely something where hopefully week 2 has a little bit more good football in there for
It'll
some of these teams that.
usually it takes about 4 weeks for people to kind of get into a rhythm.
Mhm.
That's usually when we start seeing the quality of football improve. So I'm hoping next week will look a little bit better, same as you. But I think it's going to take about another 3 weeks before we actually start getting into. This is also why when I used to write the trade content for our site, and I still do participate in that, but I don't write it all like I used to. I used to write all of it. My big thing is don't make trades until after week 4 because you don't know what your team is more than likely, and you don't know who's going to get hurt. And the NFL is still figuring itself out.
Right.
You don't know what the actual pecking order is at that point. And by week 4, you start to have enough sample to where you can start making educated opinions on certain things. But yeah, like it's entirely possible that the team that had Kelsey or Mark Andrews got chopped. You know what I mean? If either of those
Mhm.
two guys are available, I'd be willing to spend up on that a little bit above my usual $72 a week budget because your opportunity to roster Travis Kelsey and Mark Andrews is very limited. So I might
Yeah,
be
I'd
willing to do that. I'm not going to
I'd
blow half my fab for it, and I think
I'd
somebody
double
might.
I'd double the 70. I'd throw 150 down for
You're about
Travis Kelce.
150, so you're at about 20-ish% of your fab. Okay.
I mean, it's Travis Kelce. You saw how
No,
bad the
I think
Chiefs
that's
receivers are.
I
So I
can't argue
mean,
with you about that. I'd probably be willing to do about the same thing for Mark Andrews if he was available, if that was the
Mark
team.
Andrews, I'd probably go lower just for the simple fact of they have so many mouths to feed in Baltimore, and especially with Dobbins getting hurt, that I,
Mm,
I
possible.
mean, I don't see Lamar throwing for 6,000 yards like he says he wants to do, but
Yeah, well, I want a solid gold toilet. We all ain't got things we want that we ain't never gonna get. It's like that's um. But I would be willing to spend up for those two guys. Those are probably or and
hmm
then if Goddard got chopped, I would certainly have a bid in
yeah,
for Goddard if I especially if I needed a tight end. But that's probably where I would probably just drop the entire $72 on Goddard and probably not make any other bids unless I had to.
yeah, that's about where I'd be too. I
Yeah, maybe goes, maybe I want to go to 100, depending on how bad my tight end situation actually was. But
yeah.
there's a lot of guys that, disappointed but probably didn't kill you, like Kittle with a 4. I don't love it.
hmm
Um, Kyle Pitts, like there's just a lot of things like that. But
If you're still rostering Kyle Pitts,
that's on you. That's what I've been saying for a long time. That's your fault. You did that. I have
Yeah.
two names for tight end, and only two: Luke Musgrave, Hunter Henry.
Hmm.
And I'd be I don't really care about the order. Take either one. Probably prefer Hunter Henry because I usually stay away from rookie tight end. But those are my two non-big name tight ends that I would be willing to look at that are probably available in your league. Luke Musgrave is 14% rostered, so there's good chance. And then Hunter Henry's 11% rostered. And I was saying this in 32 teams in 32 days in our preseason content, and I even wrote a little thing in the background on our Discord for the website. Everybody just done forgot about Hunter Henry. They just done forgot he exists. And that's a mistake because Mac Jones loves to throw it to him. He was wildly inconsistent last year. He's going to be wildly inconsistent probably again this year. But he was going undrafted, which is wrong. He should be more than likely rostered, and he should be in the streaming tight end conversation pretty much week to week, if not a little higher. Because in reality, with the possible exception of Juju Smith-Schuster, I think he probably is like the number one pass catcher on that team.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the Patriots look like the same Patriots team from last year. They really do, which is to say, crappy. Good defense. Love that defense. Man, that defense is good every year.
Mm-hmm.
That defense is good every year. That's the other thing about why I'm not panicking about the Eagles. They played what in my estimation, is like a borderline, is like a top 5 defense.
Mm-hmm.
And then even they lost J.C. Horn, and it didn't even matter. They just they just went next man up, keep going, and they slowed down an Eagles defense. They still lost the game, but they slowed down an Eagles defense that was averaging like 28 points last year. Granted, it's week 1. There's a lot of weird crap that was going on, but those are my two. Who would you recommend at tight end, Lance?
Well, considering if you got chopped, you might have had Darren Waller or Zach Ertz between the two. I'd probably take Zach Ertz. I mean, he played.
That would be cheaper.
Yeah, that would be
infinitely cheaper, actually.
Yeah. And I mean, the game script just looks amazing for him. The Cardinals are going to suck this year. Everyone knows that. They're going to throw a ton. And he already got 10 targets in week 1. Granted, did he do much with them? No. But PPR doesn't matter. As long as he's catching, that'll rack up eventually.
Mm-hmm.
For lower names, I would be looking at someone like Hayden Hurst. I mean, he looks to have a good connection with. Yeah, I mean,
Hayden Hurst.
He's not someone who jumps off the page, but at the same time, with Bryce Young, that's who he's going to be looking for. Him and Adam Thielen.
Young needs a safety blanket, and Hayden Hurst is a perfect little pacifier. He's the whoopee for that team. He's the little safety blanket over the middle of the field, like, just get the ball out of my hand. And Hayden Hurst is great at that. He did that job very well for Joe Burrow last year, and he already scored a touchdown.
Oh, absolutely.
And their wide receivers are already beat to hell. Like Adam Thielen played, but he was not healthy. You could see.
Oh no.
He was running under labor. And fun fact, like he's my age. So like Adam Thielen's 33, I'm 36. So it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't recover from experience, Lance. You don't recover from screwing with your hamstring at 33 the way that you do at 23. Like,
oh no.
Speak from experience on this one. like I pulled my hamstring at 33 playing paintball, and I was laid up for weeks. And I'm like, oh, this is what getting old is. This is horrible. Oh, this is bad. I hate this. Like, yeah.
The other guy that he's a familiar name. You probably had him get you out of a pinch in years past. I like Logan Thomas again. I mean, there is a lot of mouths to feed. You have Sam Howell throwing you the ball, but he played 82% of the snaps. You got Eric Bieniemy calling the plays over there. I don't think Sam Howell is going to be a gunslinger. I think he's going to be relatively conservative. I think he's going to target the tight end. He didn't have a great week 1, but at the same time, if you're getting Logan Thomas, you're just looking for serviceable. You're looking to get up from nothing to serviceable. So
Right, right.
that's kind of where I'm at. And one final name I'll throw out there. I feel a lot of people might have waited in their drafts to draft tight end because they had all these rookies they were thinking we're going to get them out of a bind between Michael Mayer, Dalton Kincaid. Dawson Knox played 84% of the snaps and had about the same production as Dalton Kincaid.
See,
So
that's funny. I have the opposite opinion. I don't want either
I,
because that's just going to be my
yeah,
nightmare is trying to figure out who's going to do what week in, week out. That's what I've been saying for a long time is I just don't really want to deal with either one. I would
it,
rather I would rather deal with like Gerald Everett because I know that Gerald Everett has the whole job.
mm-hmm,
And it's like, just give me that. I'd rather deal with that because it's like, I'd rather deal with Hunter Henry than any of that because I feel like Hunter Henry has got a much. This has been my thing for a long time. Mike Gesicki doesn't matter. He just doesn't matter. They're not. He's not going to siphon in enough off the Hunter Henry train week in, week out. Whereas I think the Knox Kincaid thing is going to be a 1A, 1B, one whatever all year
mm-hmm.
long where they go back and forth and back and forth. And I think they showed you they're going to run a lot of 12 personnel because they don't really have a good slot receiver. They don't even have a good wide receiver too. Yeah, I said it. I
They
said
don't
it.
even have a good wide receiver one, really. No, but I
Oh,
mean,
I'll send Stefan Diggs to your. I'll send your information to my friend Stefan. Don't you worry about that. You'll get a phone call later
oh,
tonight.
Stefan did. Oh, I thought we were talking about the Patriots. That's my bad.
No, we were talking about the Bills.
Oh, Bills. Okay,
Uh,
that's my
that's why I
bad.
was saying I don't want to deal with the two tight ends because the Bills were showing you last night that they're running a lot of 12 personnel because they're both on the
Mm-hmm.
field. And the reason they're doing that is because they know they don't have a good slot receiver.
Right.
And that's where I was saying they don't even have a good wide receiver too in Gabe Davis. I'm
No,
not sold.
and
Haven't been for a long time. And
yeah,
there were some comments that were made by the Patriots coaching staff or Patriots. Now you got me doing it by the Bills coaching staff last night. Let me see if I can actually find it. I have it here in our Discord somewhere. One moment on that. But yeah, there was some comment. Yeah, Sean McDermott made a comment when he was asked at the presser last night a question to the effect of do you feel that you need a strong wide receiver too, like wide, do you need a strong number two wide receiving option alongside Stephon Diggs was the exact question. And Sean McDermott's response was, yes, we need that. So it's a direct shot at Gabe Davis because
oh
Gabe
yeah,
Davis has not done
yeah.
much. And so I'm kind of on the same opinion of like, I don't really want Gabe Davis, to be honest with you. And they need another wide receiver for that team. My whole point with that was I think that's kind of why they're running so much 12 personnel. And I think when they're going to do that, it means Knox and Kincaid will kind of eat into each other because
Mm-hmm.
they're gonna share a job effectively. Somebody's going to play tight end, somebody's going to be in the slot, but they seem like they're going to trade that responsibility back and forth. And I can't figure out who's going to do what, so it makes it really hard for me to trust that on a week in week out basis. So it's why I'd rather have some of these other guys where it's like I just know that that guy is the true tight end and he's not going to have to share. And it's tough because I get the appeal of the Bills tight ends because they're going to be on the field a lot and they're going to run a lot of routes because they throw a lot of passes. But for me, it's becoming very much. It's like the Bills that I want is Diggs and Cook, and I would want Allen, but I will never roster Allen because of the price tag. In
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of it. I don't really want any of the other stuff. Maybe Tyler Bass if you still play with kickers. He's not going to
Yeah.
doink a 50-yarder in for you every week, but he still looked good. Just he looked good besides that. Like, um, so yeah, it's rough out there though. At the old tight end position. Uh, what about Dalton Schultz? Because he looked like he was very popular and he looked like death warmed over in that game. 2 catches on 4 targets is not what you were hoping for.
No, I think he was probably the one person on the Texans catching passes that most people could remember. So that's probably why he got so popular. Um, you have Nico Collins, who got 11 targets. You have Robert Woods, who got 10 targets. Like, those are way better options if you're looking for someone in the Texans game script who's going to be throwing a lot. I would be going after them. I would stay away
Sure.
from Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz he was solid with the Cowboys. He was never at the level that everyone
There's a
wanted to
reason the
draft him at.
Cowboys declined to pay him what he
There you
wanted.
go. There you go.
There is a reason
That,
for
I
that.
mean, yeah. So
He has a great matchup this week against the Colts. I'm willing to keep him on my bench for one more week against the Colts. Not starting him, but I'd be willing to bench him for one more week to see what he does against the Colts because it's a great matchup. If he can't do it against the Colts, he's just droppable. You can just
yeah,
drop him and just be
I
done with it.
just if you have him on your roster right now, you might as well, but I cannot see any reason to.
I would not be going out of my way to
Yeah.
roster him. The one that I really
No.
want is Hunter Henry because I've seen Hunter Henry do it for years.
Mhm.
And then on top of that, I believe it's something that's sustainable. And then on top of that, they play the Dolphins this week, and the Dolphins are horrible against tight end anyway.
Yeah,
So you have a
absolutely.
team that
If
you have a team that wants to throw to the tight end going up against a team that is bad against guarding the tight end. I,
right.
I would be more than happy to start Hunter Henry this week. Hunter Henry
Absolutely.
weirdly has gone from being undrafted with no ADP to where he would be a top 12 tight end for me this week in my rankings. I'd be starting him. So
Oh
it's
yeah. No, he's been the consistent producer for the Patriots and
yeah.
probably why they have not really tried to revamp their wide receiver core. They've just thrown band-aids at it. So, um Hayden Hurst is the guy for me. I mean,
Yeah,
you said
I
it
can't
perfectly.
disagree with that.
He is the perfect, person for Bryce Young to be looking for every single time. So, for me, yeah, I'd be going for Henry if he's available. If you can't get Henry, I would be looking for Hurst. I
Yep.
mean, he'll at least give you 5 every single week, and
Every week he's
that
getting
might
I'd
keep
say
you
it's actually
alive.
probably closer to 7 or 8, and if he falls into the end zone, you get the 14 than you got in week 1.
Exactly.
And it's like if you get a 14 out of your tight end, you're feeling pretty good about your life.
Oh,
Pretty good.
absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely.
and then if you want a rookie and you want to go with the dart throw and the shiny new toy, I would take Musgrave. I'll take a poke at it. But I'm not one of these people that is going to advise you. I would not spend a lot on that. If somebody
No.
wants to spend a lot on that, go nuts. I think you might be recommending over Sam Laporta. It sounded like
If
over
he's available,
Musgrave.
I'm getting Sam Laporta every single time. Yeah, Sam Laporta for me is going to be someone who I don't see the Lions playing with lead and running. I know they're gonna want to run the ball, but they're gonna have to throw it just like they did last year. And you can't throw to Amon-Ra St. Brown every single play.
Yes,
Laporta
you
is gonna
could.
be
My
there.
fans
Well,
greatly appreciate that.
in an I in an ideal world, yes, that would be nice. But Laporta is gonna be that guy that makes everyone forget about TJ Hawkinson in Detroit. So
Um, well, yeah, they've already forgotten about him in Detroit. They couldn't get him out of there fast enough.
felt
Uh,
like it.
uh, that's kind of it at this point. Was there any one individual player you wanted to talk about on our way out the door here, Lance? Because it's been a good inaugural show. But we should start wrapping up here and letting people get on with their evening. So, is there any one individual player that we either talked about or maybe we didn't talk about that you want to kind of just pump up one last time?
Joshua Kelly.
It's
Again.
okay.
I just with Kellen Moore coming over, it's clear he wants to run the ball. I think I read somewhere that in a neutral game script they ran it 70 or 67% of the time.
Yeah.
So like especially with them getting half the snaps with Austin Eckler and they're talking about using Eckler more in a rushing role.
Eckler's
And
now
I
hurt.
get he might be a little dinged up, but I think it really comes down to Joshua Kelly just getting more involved in this offense. He was kind of a guy that, you've seen kind of fluffed up a little bit last year when it looked like Eckler was hurt, and then, oh, he might be the guy, or it might be, one of their other backs. But this year it looks like Kellen Moore has a specific plan for Josh Kelly. And if Eckler is banged up more so than, everyone seems to think he is, then you get a top 15 running back easy.
Yeah, well, this is why I was saying if you were going to roster Austin Eckler, you had to roster Josh Kelly, who's one of the must handcuffs.
Oh, yeah.
So there's that, and okay, no, that's definitely a good one. I mean, he should definitely be. He was my like fifth, yeah, fifth. He was
Mm-hmm.
my fifth overall choice on week 2 waivers that I would recommend in order. And these are not chop players, so this is just widely available waiver players. It's Puka, Kenny Gainwell, Jalen Warren, Kyron Williams, Josh Kelly. That's my top 5 for this week. That's who I want. So, and people could quibble with the order. I'm sure they will. I on my way out, I will just reference T. Higgins. T. Higgins is available. He had 8 targets, and they're not going to play in a hurricane every week. Okay,
No.
so
And Joe Burrow's going to get more than 3 points every single week. So
you should take a look at that because that's going to be a thing that you're going to want at some point, very 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 rapidly. So that's one. And then uh, that feels like cheating. So I'll just point out uh, don't sleep on Puka and Kyron Williams. I know the
mm-hmm.
Rams project to be a bad team. I know they were bad last year. I know that these are 2 guys that you've never really heard of, right? I know all this. This is how you can make real hay in fantasy football. While everybody is trying to kill each other, trying to get Dolphins and Chiefs and Bills and Eagles and B players on those teams. No, that's not always a good plan because those teams are good for a reason and they have lots of mouths to feed and established players that need to get fed. You can make a lot of hay for yourself by looking at at high volume players on bad teams. So don't sleep on the Pukas and the Kyron Williamses. Those usage rates are real and they are out there. And just because nobody's ever heard of them before in your league does not mean that you should just ignore them. That's how you can beat your friends because they don't know what any of that is. So that's like if you really want to win, I know it's weird to say like if you really want to win, go look at some Rams. But it's true. Like go look at some Rams in the background because they have some very underknown players that are going to get a lot of usage that I don't need them to look. I don't need Puka to get 15 targets every week to be successful.
No.
And it's like and everybody needs running backs. So it's something like that. So yeah, take a look at T Higgins, but don't sleep on the bargain bin. Don't blow all your fab budget in week 1 for the love of God. Because you'll probably live to regret that when people start getting hurt because you can't undo it. Uh, and then hopefully we'll get some proper football here starting in the next couple weeks because that week one was schlock. It
Yeah.
was ugly. A lot of bad games, a lot of really crappy football. Always works like that. Week 1, teams are figuring it out. They'll start knocking the rust off around like week 4, and then we'll be off and running. And then one last final note, because I wouldn't be doing my job. Tariq Cohen just signed with the Carolina Panthers practice squad. Welcome back to the NFL, Tariq Cohen. I cannot believe he actually
No
managed to.
way.
Yeah, so there you go.
Wow.
There you go.
How
He
much you
has
throwing
been
down on him?
nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
He's on the practice squad. He
Yeah.
signed with the Panthers practice squad. I'm not interested. We'll see if he can actually get called up to the active roster, and then maybe I'll care. Uh, I just bring it up because it's a very nice story. Because Tariq Cohen has been out of the NFL for 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
and there were questions as to whether he would ever get back into the league.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, he
No,
tore he tore his ACL, he tore his MCL, and then he got cut by the Bears, and then at his workout for his big comeback, he tore his MCL again, and then missed a whole. I'm sorry, no, he tore his ACL again, and then missed a whole another year. And it's like it's actually pretty remarkable that for a guy who's been out of the NFL since September of 2020, that he actually managed to rehab enough and after 3 years and get back into the league. So congratulations to Tariq Cohen on even getting back to the practice squad. That's remarkable. Most guys after 3 years, man, you never hear about them again. They're just gone.
No, absolutely.
Like,
I mean, I hope to see him out on a football field. He was a human joystick when he was out there returning punts or just running or catching screens or anything. And, for a guy, like you said, who's overcome the hardships in his personal life that he has,
oh God, I didn't even get into
you
that.
know,
I didn't even get into what his personal life actually is off the field. You can read the Google it.
yeah,
You can read the
yep,
the article he wrote for the Players Journal a couple years ago about what his life actually is off the football field, and it's rough, man. That's a rough read. That is not a low stress life. Let's just say that. That guy's got a
hmm
lot of stuff he's dealing with in the background with family, friends, his career, and then his knees, and it all comes crashing down at one time. It's not you never know what people are going through in their personal life, you know what I mean? And
absolutely.
that's a rough read.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
and I read that too, and like hopefully he makes it back onto the football field, and
I think he probably will.
congratulations.
I think he'll probably get called up at some point. Um, I think he'll be good. Uh,
Oh, I know he's better than Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard right now, or Chuba Hubbard.
well, he's not better than Miles Sanders, but as little as I think of Miles Sanders, let's see Tariq Cohen actually suit up. I've never seen him run a football in 3 years. I don't know what his level of
That's true.
burst looks like. Like I don't know.
Judging
Like
from when I last saw him on the football field, though, he is a hell of a talent,
yeah,
and
I think
good
they'll
for him
probably send him
for.
out. I think they'll probably send him out to play special teams at first, and then we'll see. We'll
Hmm.
get a chance to see what he looks like. But no, yeah, I just wanted to close with that because that's a real feel good story. Well, maybe not quite that, but it's definitely noteworthy, and it's definitely good for him because I
Yeah.
genuinely believe we would never see him back in the NFL after he went out the last time, and that would be the end of it. So, yeah, it's remarkable he even made it back to the practice squad. Let's see if he can get called up. And then let's see, we'll get a chance to see what he looks like. But it wouldn't shock me if they had him running punts or something like that
Oh yeah.
for the Panthers. Like,
He was
but
amazing at it. Why not?
right, exactly. Like they always need people to do that job. But anyway, Lance, it's been a pleasure, man. It's been a really fun first show. I know people have been enjoying it, and we'll be back next Tuesday, man. It'll be good as we continue to make the cut and help people kind of navigate guillotine because it's such a nightmare trying to manage your budget and battle back against what everybody else is doing. But check us out at importantnonsense.com. Sign up for our Discord. Uh, Lance, where can the people find you in the meantime?
I got my Twitter handle right down there at LancerOX13. Um, on Twitter, usually just kind of tweeting about football, fantasy football, all the good things that the people care about.
Yep, and then obviously you can hit us both up on our Discord
Yep.
if you're a member with us, and we're always happy to talk football. It's what we do. It's what we do in there all day. And we will see you next Tuesday for Week 3 analysis. And until then, keep up the nonsense.